George, do you know the different names for voodoo?
Well, you see, Joe, if you'd asked me before you wrote this, I could have said yes, but now I'm obligated by the script to say no.
If you read the script before we started, you'd know that's what I had. You could have said, oh, I'm going to change this a little. Or just tell me. Voodoo is also known as hoodoo, mumbo jumbo, juju.
Juju sounds anti-Semitic.
Not likely, since we have candy called juju beans.
Juju beans sounds pretty racist.
Are you serious?
No, but I figured I should contribute something to this conversation. Isn't voodoo where we get zombies from?
Pretty much. You know, I attended a zombie ritual a couple of times.
You did?
Yes, I would go to this building and they'd feed us the flesh and blood of this guy who was supposed to be God's son.
Joe, you idiot, that's the Eucharist. It's got nothing to do with voodoo.
Okay, buddy.
I mean, it's still weird to hear myself say that because I know that there is a lot of mixing of Christianity and voodoo. But anyway, isn't saying Jesus is a zombie kind of old? It's like one of the favorite things of the atheist movement circa the 2000s. And it's not really accurate. He's a lich.
He's a lich?
A lich.
What's a lich?
He's an undead sorcerer.
I didn't know that, but considering how much Richard Dawkins' brain has rotted since 2000, I'd say zombie is still a favorite thing amongst the atheist movement.
Fair.
Welcome to Does This Still Work? The podcast looks at old movies and asks, does this still work? I'm Joe Dixon.
And I'm George Romaka. And today we're discussing Eve's Bayou from 1997 and some historical context. Do I have a little quip here about the movie at all? No, because I really can't come up with one for this. First, podcasty stuff. You can reach us at dtswpod@gmail.com, on Facebook, Letterboxd, and on our YouTube channel. Please tell your friends about us and leave 5-star ratings everywhere. You can pick what we watch and get extra per episode content by funding us on Patreon for as little as $1 a month at patreon.com/dtswpod. Now, Joe, take us back to 1997.
We will go back to 1997, but since we did mention it in the cold open in the passing, what do you know about voodoo?
Not as much as I thought I did a second ago. Because as soon as you asked the question, my brain seized up like an old engine without oil.
So you're giving me shit about not running it past you, and now you're telling me you don't have anything?
I did know that it was also called hoodoo.
Okay. Did you read that in the book, or did someone say it to you? Or?
Almost certainly. That or I saw it on an episode of, like, Law & Order SVU.
I mean, it's not inconceivable that you would know these things. I mean, you have been at least around part of the world.
Yeah.
You were in the Navy, so you served with a lot of guys. Did any of them have any rituals like that? They were into hoodoo or voodoo or anything?
We all did. We hung chicken bones off of our main engines to ward off evil spirits. I am not joking.
You're not joking?
I am not joking. We all collectively looked at that and were like, we're okay with this. It couldn't hurt.
Why did you rank? Who decided you hang chicken? How's that even? Is that Navy regulation?
Nope. But we also know that the ordnance technicians welded nickels to the CWIS mounts, the machine gun mount things, the automated turrets, to pay them to work.
God damn it, we really need to talk. If this show ever gets professional, we'll have conversations before we write the script, because I would know more about this, but we need to move on. How have we never had this conversation?
Sailors are historically notoriously superstitious.
You know, I actually know that. I've heard that, yes. But I guess I just assumed it wouldn't be... Being a Navy is so much more formal than just being like a sailor, you know, like a pirate or something, so I presumed you guys wouldn't actually do stuff like that.
It's formal when you're, like, doing inspections and mustering in the morning. The rest of the time, you're just a bunch of people on a boat.
What's muster?
It's when you show up for work in the morning.
They call it muster?
Yeah, you muster.
Huh. Interesting. We really need to talk more. We're two people ostensibly friends. I knew none of this.
The thing is, most of my friends as an adult came from the Navy, so it's conversations I don't have to have often because we already know this shit.
Yes.
So unless somebody asks questions about it, I don't think to bring it up.
And I never thought to ask you about voodoo, hoodoo, or juju. Which, in retrospect, obviously was a mistake on my part. But let's move on. Even though this movie isn't technically about voodoo, I think it's more about adultery and, children coming of age. I'm going to stick with voodoo and Creoles for this History Corner. First, for those who might not know, let me give you a very quick rundown on voodoo. The religion was brought to Haiti by African slaves. It then mingled with the Catholicism the French colonists had imposed on the people. Now, if you know your history, you know the French once ruled Louisiana, thus the black enslaved people there also adapted to some elements of the hoodoo. This religion believes in spirits, healing powers, and being able to contact your ancestors. And, as you saw in the movie, the faith also believes in premonitions and being able to put curses on people. Okay, now the characters in Eve's Bayou are Creole, and I'm going to quote Wikipedia on this. Creole peoples are ethnic groups formed during the European colonial era. From the mass displacement of peoples brought into sustained contact with others from different linguistic and cultural backgrounds, who converge onto a colonial territory to which they had not previously belonged. Often involuntarily uprooted from their original home, the settlers were obligated to develop and creatively merge the desirable elements from their diverse backgrounds to produce new varieties of social, linguistic, and cultural norms that superseded the prior forms. This process, known as creolization, is characterized by rapid social flux regularized into Creole ethnogenesis. Creole peoples vary widely in ethnic background and mixture, and many have since developed distinct ethnic identities. The development of Creole languages is sometimes mistakenly attributed to the emergence of Creole ethnic identities. However, the two developments occur independently. Okay, so let's see what's going on with Juju and Creoles in 1997. Obviously, we're going to use Louisiana papers as our source. George, read the headline from the Times-Picayune.
Halloween jovial, spiritual for followers of voodoo.
One of the people this article quotes is a lady named Ava K. Jones, who is a voodoo priest. I will quote, "Halloween has great spiritual implications," she said. "It is a day when the veil between the living and the spiritual worlds is thinnest. Followers of voodoo see it as a happy day rather than a spooky one, since they are close to the ancestors. We actively embrace them. They are part of our lives," said Jones, who makes a living reading tarot cards, performing ritual shows, and speaking about voodoo. "If things are not going well for us, we might get a reading to see if we're doing something that is displeasing them." Jones plans to visit a graveyard on Halloween, where she will pray to Oya, the goddess who is the queen of cemeteries. She'll offer Oya flowers, a song, and a dance. End quote.
Aw, how sweet. I'm sure Oya appreciated that.
Yes, but George, don't you think being the queen of cemeteries sounds kind of awful?
I don't know. Cemeteries are relatively peaceful, and the denizens never, form uprisings and try and behead you.
It's true, but they are also rotting corpses in the ground. I don't know if I want to be the goddess of that.
Yeah, don't be corpsist.
Very good. This same article quotes a queen. That would be Queen Margaret Gross of the New Orleans Historic Voodoo Museum. She says, "Voodoo is remembering the ones who've gone on. Halloween is derived from All Hallows Eve, or All Saints' Eve, as is originally a Celtic holiday celebrated on the eve of All Saints' Day, November 1st. Even though it's a Celtic tradition, it's also a voodoo tradition. It's also Catholic tradition. In Haiti, it's called the Feast of the Gida Spirits, or Cemetery Spirits. In Mexico, it's called the Day of the Dead. We're all doing the same thing." End quote. Now, this might sound all perfectly harmless, but since this is religion we're talking about, of course it isn't. George, read this headline from the Town Talk.
Mercury or not, science, government bump into faith on issue. That never happens.
The article starts off profiling different voodoo practitioners who used mercury as part of their rituals, and then it says this. "The federal EPA tops a growing list of agencies perturbed to learn some Americans believe the toxic metal is their friend. Believers swear by mercury, hewing to religions and customs familiar in Mexico and around the Caribbean. They carry, sprinkle, and swallow mercury, trusting it will bring fortune, love, and good health. In June, a nationwide alert from Washington warned against such cultural uses of mercury. Chicago's health department has a campaign to tell people the risk. At least 3 studies will look closely at New Yorkers who use mercury, including exposure levels. It's unknown how many people in this country rely on the tinned white metal day to day. It's also unknown whether such practices do any harm. End quote.
Bullshit. We absolutely fucking know that those practices do harm. Mercury is toxic. It kills you.
Yeah, I don't know how we can say that we don't know that. In the article itself, it just says it's toxic. If it's toxic, by definition, it's going to do harm.
Yeah.
Don't put that in your body. Anyway, back to the article. Mercury is not limited to religious worship. By now, it's woven into Caribbean and Latin American cultures, said Clyde Johnson, an environmental scientist at the City University of New York who does research on mercury use. Devotees strew mercury about their houses and cars. Some burn it in candles, others add it to mop water and bath water. Mexican-American users, in particular, favor mercury to relieve empacho, indigestion. End quote. Now, I have never heard of this. Have you, George?
No, I haven't heard of people deliberately ingesting mercury. The closest thing I heard of was like a pair of brothers who used to do this kind of wrestling tough guy thing where one would break things against the other one's body, and some of those things were long fluorescent light bulbs. The brother who got the things broken against him died eventually of mercury poisoning.
Oh, boy. I assume that's a news story and not something you knew personally.
No, I saw it on I think it was on a can you believe this shit type of show.
Ah.
But if you don't know, fluorescent light bulbs use mercury as a conductor. It vaporizes inside the tube and provides a conductive pathway. So when the current goes through that, it causes electrons to be expelled, which strike against the phosphorescent coating on the light bulb, which is what produces the light.
Yes, well, this is 26 years ago. I hope folks aren't still doing it. Okay, let's wrap this up by looking at Creoles. This is also from Town Talk. Headline, George.
Oh, well, we know how great they are from the last article. No Cajuns fight for recognition.
This article was nice enough to define for us what a Cajun and what a Creole was, so I'm going to read it. Cajun, the white descendants of French-speaking Catholics Acadians who fled Canada in the late 1700s and settled eventually in southwest Louisiana rather than pledge allegiance to the British Crown. Cajun cooking makes heavy use of rice, seafood, pork, and hot spices. File gumbo is a typical dish. Creole, generally, is blacks with some white blood. Acadian blood in the case of Creoles living in southwestern Louisiana. Creole cooking is more richly sauced and is more closely connected to New Orleans and classic French recipes, shrimp remoulade being a typical dish. Both Cajun and Creole cuisines have been heavily influenced by black cooks and have some characteristics of soul food. Cajun music and Creole music, or Zydeco, have a somewhat similar sound, and some musicians increasingly perform both. The fiddle and accordion often tend to drive the sound of both. There is more country in Cajun and more rhythm and soul in Zydeco. George, were you ever into either of these musical styles?
Not that I'm aware of. I mean, I'm sure I've accidentally heard some, and anything with a good groove to it is going to catch my ear and I'm going to nod my head to, but I can't name a single song from these genres.
Have you ever actually been to New Orleans? Well, New Orleans or Louisiana?
Nope.
No, me neither.
We're going to go one of these days.
We definitely should. Anyway, back to the article, whose focus is on Creoles wanting recognition because marketing to tourists by the state back in 1987 seemed to only focus on Cajuns, at least according to these people, quoting now. In the view of Creole Incorporated and the other concerned heritage group, the Un-Cajun Committee, the marketing has nevertheless been flawed because it has focused mainly on the word Cajun. What we seek is equal billing for our contributions to the way life is lived here, said Melvin Caesar, president of Creole Incorporated, a non-profit promotion organization with about 80 members. We're not anti-Cajun, we're pro-Creole. Give us credit too. The Cajuns didn't come up with all the food and all the music and all the various folkways. We all contributed. Life's one big mix in this part of the world. Almost all you hear is Cajun, 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 said Adolfo Harmon, the Lafayette tax account who founded the committee, which claims several dozen members, all blacks. Among them are some top officers of the local chapter of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. I'm not a Cajun, never had any of my ancestors intermixed with them or anybody else, Harmon said. I'm all African descent and I'm insulted. End quote. I have to say, and this is embarrassing on my part, I didn't know there was that much of a distinction. I thought Cajun and Creole were interchangeable terms you use for people who lived in Louisiana. I understand there were some ethnic differences, but overall, I thought they were pretty much the same thing. What about you, George?
I didn't know enough to think that there was what I know, Joe. I can't. It all seems so silly to me.
Why is it silly?
Because it's all like you're all. It's my humanism coming out in a kind of toxic way.
I'll tell you one thing. If someone came up to me who was white and said he's Creole, and somebody black came and just said they were Cajun, I got like, all right. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, congratulations. Good for you.
Yeah, I just like, all right. That's fine.
You look human to me. Which I guess is the colorblind, sort of mentality to it. But at some point, right, this deliberate dividing of ourselves into boxes it just gets silly, right? When you have the un-Cajun committee, that's as silly as being an atheist has to be. When your entire position is putting yourself in opposition to another thing.
But I mean, we do have ethnic differences and stuff. Although in this case, I just don't see it. I don't see what the big difference is. I probably, there are people who hopefully listening in the South and maybe in Louisiana right now probably screaming at us like, how could you say that? But honest to God, you don't sound that different.
How dare you think I'm from Brooklyn? I'm from Queens.
Well, exactly. That's exactly the distinction. It's like,
yeah.
What, okay. You're all from New York.
If you say so.
Yeah, right? You're all from Louisiana. You sound exactly alike to me. You like pretty much the same food and the same music. Oh, it's a little more soul here.
One has more sauce.
And more sauce there.
Okay.
Like, okay. Big distinction.
But also, this is the same newspaper, that was questioning whether or not Mercury was. So I'm not sure we should take their breakdown of what these different cultures are as really indicative of what those differences are. It might just be more than, this one uses more sauce.
Fair, but we see the quotes. I mean, presumably those are accurate and people really were upset. But anyway, we can't solve that. But what we can do is discuss Eve's Bayou. So let's get into that, George.
Alrighty.
Tell us about Eve's Bayou.
This was written and directed by Cassie Lemons,
whom we've seen as an actress and Gridlocked. And I've seen her in Silence of the Lambs, School Days, and she was the director of a film I saw called Harriet, about Harriet Tubman.
And we both saw her directorial work in Luke Cage. IMDb says, "What did little Eve see, and how will it haunt her? Husband, father, and womanizer Louis Batista is the head of an affluent family, but it is the women who rule this gothic world of secrets, lies, and mystic forces." IMDb was having a lot of fun with that. Amazon says, "The story of a 10-year-old Creole girl growing up in a small town in Louisiana."
Is that your white voice?
Yes. That is my I'm white and none of this makes any sense to me voice. Nothing in the Amazon blurb is incorrect, but it's terribly uninformative.
Oh my God, yes. It doesn't really tell you anything at all. I thought Gothic as soon as I saw this picture, and I've originally seen it when it first came out, but I haven't seen it in years. And rewatching, I kept thinking the word Gothic, but I was like, am I using that word correctly? But yeah, Gothic, I guess, is the term you use for these things.
It didn't occur. That word did not occur to me at all during this movie.
No, really?
Nope. But then again, that word never occurs to me for anything. So. And
whenever I see movies, and this is the label they get for movies like this, where it's like set in the South and dad's having an affair and mom's got mystical powers, or the sister-in-law has some mystical powers, and all this sort of goofy stuff. It's all, they usually call them Gothic novels, Gothic movies. I don't know why. I didn't look up the definition of Gothic. I just know they tend to get the labels.
Mm-hmm. So, the opening credits are played over spooky wind sounds and grainy black and white images of two people having sex. In the film, our protagonist is 10 years old. Over these images, her adult self monologues about the nature of memory and spoils the movie for us by telling us that the father will die. Well, she says that she kills him, but that's only true if you take some things for granted. We'll get there.
Did it really ruin it for you?
No, not really.
Okay.
But I was trying to get creative with the writing.
I thought it was one hell of a great opening. This summer I shot my dad, or whatever she said, well, I killed my father. I'm like, all right.
I killed my father when I was 10 years old.
Yes.
That's what she says.
Right. That gets your attention.
Yeah, and it starts, okay, why did the 10-year-old girl kill her father? And all of the reasons are like, oh, I really hope we don't see that. We get to enjoy some nice Louisiana scenery as the narration continues about how Eve Batiste is named after an enslaved woman who saved the life of a French guy. It ends at the rather lovely home of our protagonist's family, the Batistas, where there is a party going on. At the party, we meet the Batista children, Cicely, Eve, and Poe, from eldest to youngest. Eve is our protagonist and will trick Poe into eating chocolate-covered bees, which is more of an environmental crime nowadays than a prank. Covering most things in chocolate makes them taste like chocolate anyway. The party involves lots of gossip, flirting, and dancing, notably between Louis, the Batiste father and local physician, and Maddie Moreau, friend of the family. Maddie's husband, Lenny Moreau, is also in attendance, as are Louis's sister, Moselle Batiste Delacroix, and her third husband, Harry. Louis also dances with his eldest daughter, Cicely, making Eve somewhat jealous. Now we have a rather large block of the cast, which is what happens when the film opens with a party containing most of the cast.
Well, before we get into the cast, and we will, I want to ask you this. Isn't it kind of strange that these kids seem to have no other friends but each other? What do these children associate with? Even at this party, where are the other children?
Good questions, Joe. Eve Batiste is played by Journey Smollett. And I have to ask, because there's another Smollett in this, are all of these people related to Jussie Smollett?
I have absolutely no idea.
Okay.
I don't think so, but I have no clue.
Cicely Batiste is played by Megan Good. I mean, Cicely is played by Megan Good.
Megan Good! And there's her sister, Megan Bad. Cousin Megan Okay. Anyway, we'll make fun of this poor woman's name. We last saw her in Friday. And I've seen her in Brick, Shazam, Fear of the Gods.
Poe Batiste, his name is Poe. P-O-E, Papa Oscar Echo. He's not the Poe Batista. He's not the one with the least money.
And he's not a Poe sandwich.
Nope, he's not a Poe boy.
No.
He is played by Jake Smollett. Louis Batiste is played by very oft DTSW alum, Samuel L. Jackson. And we've seen him in Pulp Fiction, Jackie Brown, Jurassic Park, Goodfellas, Do the Right Thing, and Coming to America.
And I've seen him in all the Marvel movies. I'm not going to list them all. But he's also appeared in films that I've seen that are called The Hateful Eight, Chirac, Kingsman, The Secret Service, Django Unchained, The Other Guys, Inglourious Bastards. He was the narrator in that. Shaft, both 2000 and 2019 version. Kill Bill Volume 2, Out of Sight, The Long Kiss Goodnight, Amos and Andrew, Jungle Fever, and Mo Better Blues. Oh, I should say, Die Hard with a Vengeance. We both saw that, didn't we?
I've seen him in Unbreakable, The Incredibles, and Star Wars Episodes 1, 2, and 3. Then there's Moselle Batiste Delacroix, who's played by Debbie Morgan.
Who we, to my shock, first saw apparently in Taxi Driver, sharing in front of Jodie Foster. I didn't recognize her when I saw the movie.
No, okay.
You know, I remember this is my childhood crush.
Oh, wow, yeah, okay.
And I also know her, this is what made her my childhood crush, from All My Children.
Yep, like 500 and something episodes.
Yeah, she was in the show from the entire, when she showed up, she stayed it for almost the entire run of the show. All right, play the soap opera music. Anyway, yes, so she played Angie. She was married to Jesse. Now, before they got married, she was a high school student, and Jesse was also a high school student, but this rebellious one, and she came from an upper-class black family. In fact, they're way upper-class. Her dad was a lawyer, and Jesse was just like a street hood, and they didn't want their kid going out with this hood rat. But they were really into each other, so they wound up falling in love, and the parents are very much against it, and they're like, we hate this, we hate this. Now, Jesse has a bit of a temper, but he's also very loyal to his friends, and he was friends with Jenny, who was going out with Greg. Now, Greg was wanted by Liza Colby. Evil Liza Colby wanted to get into Greg's pants, but he wouldn't do it because he's with Jenny, and Jenny was a friend of Jesse. So Jesse went to Liza and said, hey, lay off, just stop bothering my friend's boyfriend. And Liza decides to trip him up by saying, oh yeah, well, you raped me. And so Jesse has to run off because he's now been accused of rape of this white woman. And so Angie confronts Liza and goes, oh, you know he didn't rape you. And Liza goes, you don't know anything. So, and since Jenny and Jesse are friends, Jenny goes off with Jesse and they run off together to New York. And they have their own little adventures. I'm not going to get all of that. Anyway, so eventually Jesse is cleared of not being a rapist. He didn't rape her. So Jenny and Greg get back together. That's for another show. And Jesse and Angie are now together. Now, Jesse and Angie have a whole bunch of other series of events. One of the things is Jesse and Angie get married and they have a kid, but they decided they don't want to have a kid, so they put the kid up for adoption, but then they decided they've changed their mind and they want the kid back. But here's the thing, it turns out that Angie's dad runs an illegal baby adoption service.
No!
So he's called Mr. Big, and so they're trying to find out who Mr. Big is, and it turns out it's Angie's dad. So he winds up, so they get in the whole thing, and he winds up flying down, I think he falls down the flight of stairs or something. He accidentally dies.
Of course.
After pulling a gun on Jesse, somehow he falls down the flight of stairs and dies. So finally he's out of the story, and so Angie and Jesse get back together, and they're all very happy for a short while. Then Angie gets harassed by her college professor who wants to get into her pants. Then he's like, I can help you out, baby, and I'll get you an A. You know what I'm saying? And she goes like, no, disgusting. And so she has to deal with that, and eventually she exposes him for being a creep. And then Jesse's half-brother goes after Angie and attacks her, because he's like a really big creep. And so she actually beats him up. He attacks her, and she beats the crap out of him. Beats him,
Girl power!
Yeah, he attacks her, and she like, Capo, and that was the end of that. So Jesse and Angie are then again back together again, and then Jesse winds up getting shot because he becomes a cop and he gets shot in his line of duty. He dies, and then Angie has to start a life over again without him and with her child. And they actually move her character off to The City, another soap opera, and then I think she was also on, and then they brought her back to All My Children. Oh, right, and then she got in a relationship with Cliff. Cliff was in a relationship with Nina. But Nina wound up leaving the show, so Cliff and Angie were together for a short while. And then Nina came back, and then they broke up. And then Angie found out with this other cop guy, but then they broke up. And then Jesse at some point comes back. Turns out he's not dead. He was just undercover for the FBI. And that, more or less, is All My Children, Angie and Jesse.
Okay.
And by the way, and again, I had such the hots for Dad. I still do, actually. She is gorgeous.
Alrighty.
Wait, you don't agree?
Yeah, I mean, no, she is, absolutely. There's nothing I can say that's going to hold a candle to the tribute that you just gave for her.
Or a character, anyway.
Maddie Moreau is played by Lisa Nicole Carson, and we saw her for the show in Love Jones.
And I've seen her in Life and Devil in a Blue Dress.
And finally, Lenny Moreau, who in my notes I just call Smiley every time I see him.
Wrong character.
I know.
Wrong character, wrong movie.
Is played by Roger Guinevere Smith, who we saw for the show in Do the Right Thing, where he did play Smiley, Malcolm X, American Gangster, and Deep Cover.
Oh, what the hell is the matter with us? Also, Get on the Bus.
Oh, and Get on the Bus, the movie with all the black people in it.
With all the black people in there, exactly. Well, black men, anyway.
Who like James Brown.
Yeah, indeed. I've also seen him in Summer of Sam, Till, Chirac, Dope, and He Got Game.
And I've seen him in Final Destination. Whew.
Yeah, that was a lot.
Believe it or not, we've only got 3 more people to introduce in the summary. Eve sneaks away from the party to a nearby garage. Inside is dust, cobwebs, and assorted things one would find in a garage, and an old-timey car that Eve falls asleep in.
For what reason do you think? Why don't you let me just run away here and I'll just go take a nap in this dirty garage for some reason?
I think she got jealous when she saw her dad and Cicely dancing together. So
oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Left and just went to fuck off and do her own thing for a little while.
But, like, of all the places to take a nap.
She's awakened to the sounds of the sex we were grainily seeing in the opening sequence between her father and the family friend Maddie. Eve squeaks, making herself known, and the adults decide it prudent to pause their tryst for another time.
Yes, generally speaking, you're supposed to stop fucking when they're
Yes.
into the room. I mean, just out of good taste, if nothing else.
Lewis takes Eve outside and tells her how much he loves her mother, Roz, and how lucky he is to have her. Then Eve asks why he dances with Cicely and not with herself. He promises to do so from now on. Then Roz comes out to tell Eve it's bedtime and show us, the audience, how unknowing she is about her husband's behavior. Roz Batiste is played by Lynn Whitfield.
I saw in the Josephine Baker story.
And I saw in the Army Now, which I believe had Pauly Shore in it.
So would you say her career went up or down from that point?
I think this came out after In the Army Now, so I'd say up, if that's true. Let me see. Hold on. Now I have to answer that question. 1994. So yes, her career went up from there. Up in Eve's bedroom, Cicely asks what's bothering her. Eve tells her. Cicely responds by telling Eve that she didn't see what she saw, that it was this whole other thing, and to never tell anyone else what she thinks she saw.
I think this may be my first introduction to the term gaslighting. I'm talking in 1997.
Ah, hearing somebody else describe this movie?
Well, no, just seeing this scene and like, well, what would you call this? Oh yeah, gaslighting.
Oh, yeah.
I originally seen the movie Gaslighting as well, but
Gotcha.
that's exactly what that is.
This is the first time you remember recognizing gaslighting.
I guess that's a better way to put it, yes.
Yeah.
Because that's exactly what that is, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yes. Holy shit, yes. Roz and Louis say goodnight to the last guests to leave, Louis's sister Mizelle, and her husband Harry. Harry and Louis have a somewhat abrasive relationship, and that won't matter, because that night, Eve has a premonition that Harry dies and wakes up to her mother on the phone getting the news that Harry has indeed died. That's why he didn't get a credit.
I also don't, when I was Bradford Marcellus, what I don't understand is, what did he die of?
I think he died of a plot.
A plot point? The script killed him. Well, literally, yes. That's
I
true.
think he died of a car. I think there was a car accident, and Mizelle wasn't hurting it, but it killed him.
Yeah, that's the impression I sort of got.
No. He died of a spider bite.
Oh, where'd you get that?
Because she sees a spider in the premonition. She sees a spider, and then she sees Harry in the car being driven away. I think he got bit by a spider and died.
Okay. Well, it's as good excuse as any, I suppose, or explanation. So he didn't get the powers.
No, he did not get web slinging and clairvoyant heebie-jeebie powers.
Heebie-jeebie. Is that what you call spider sense? How dare you, sir?
That's what I call a spidey sense. Clairvoyant heebie-jeebies. When I'm trying to describe it without saying spidey sense. What would you describe it as?
Spidey sense!
If you were trying not to call it spidey sense.
What would I, if I didn't call it spidey sense, I gave his warning, signal warning, spider warning. Oh, it's, just warning signals.
Sometime later, after Harry's funeral, Eve spends the day with Mizelle helping her out of bed. Mizelle talks about her dead husbands, 3 now, and how one of them loved her the most. By trade, Mizelle is a psychic and tells Eve to be invisible while she meets with a client. Mizelle tells that client exactly where to find her son, at what hospital, in what city, like psychics would be able to do if psychics were really psychic.
Yeah, imagine actually being that good. Like, okay,
Yeah.
must be real if you actually can do that.
Like, I hate the way it's usually portrayed in movies, because it's usually portrayed as if it's real, but they do it the same way it's done in real life, which is so vague and obnoxious as to be irredeemable. This one, no. This is what it would look like if it was real. Eve falls asleep and wakes up to Mizelle giving another client instructions on how to make a voodoo medicine bag that will bring her fortunes back.
We never see if that actually happens.
Well, we do see later that she is smiling.
Yeah, she's happy about it, but we still don't know if she ever got her fortune.
Back at the Baptistes' home, they find Roz in tears, and it is obvious that she has learned something of her husband's behavior. Roz, Mizelle, and the doctor's mother stage something of an intervention for him when he gets there.
And it's just like, he is so indifferent. He's just so cool. He's like, oh, they're always mad.
Yeah.
Oh, Daddy, don't go to them bad. He's like, oh, they always mad. And this goes on. It makes no difference whatsoever. Whatever they say to him, we never see it. They just don't give him an angry stare and he's like, whatever.
Yep. Eve accompanies her father as he makes rounds in town to treat and flirt with his patients. He sends Eve home so he can get his bedside manner on undisturbed.
Yeah, that was, what do you think of that scene?
I think he's a dirtbag.
He goes to see this patient with his daughter accompanying him. And the patient, he said, what is the matter? There's nothing wrong with you. She says, oh, but I need your help, doctor. Flooding her eyes and everything.
Doctor, I need some vitamin D.
She all but says that. And he goes like, he tells his daughter, honey, go out for a second. Daddy's got to do some work here. Like, Jesus Christ, dude. Your kid's with you. You can't turn it off for a minute.
Roz and Mizelle head into the market. On the way, Mizelle talks about how similar she and her brother are. They come upon the stall of a fortune teller, Elzora, and against Mizelle's advice, Roz has her fortune read. Elzora tells her that in 3 years, she'll be happy again, and to look to her children. Mizelle decides to have hers read too, despite naming Elzora as a sideshow attraction a moment ago. For her $1, she's told that she is cursed to have any man she marries die.
You'll be happy in 3 years. Does that mean like in 3 years she gets married again or something?
We never see that come about.
Yeah, it's just like, we just know like in 3 years you'll be happy again. Don't worry about it. Look to your children. I like, what? So what happens? And it's never answered. It's weird.
It's never answered. Hurrying away, Mizelle faints in front of a bus after having a vision of a child being struck and killed by one. Elzora is played by Diane Carroll, who we saw for the show in Claudine.
Who I know from Dynasty. Well, not the only thing I know her from, but that's the last thing I saw her in was in Dynasty, and she played Dominique Devereaux, the half-sister to Blake Carrington, the white patriarch of the family, and she was his evil not stepsister, this is a half-sister, because his dad had an affair with this black woman. And so Dominique was supposed to be there to destroy Blake. This is a soap opera, that's why he's playing the music. He's supposed to destroy Blake, but it turns out...
Oh, they know, Joe. They know why I'm playing the music. This is just the first time you get to hear it in situ.
Dominique, though, turns out that she really doesn't like Alexis, the ex-wife of Blake Carrington, and they're the ones who she really gets into a fight. They literally get in a physical altercation with each other, and Alexis is always trying to destroy Dominique, and then Dominique returns the favor. For some reason, Dominique initially starts out with a relationship with Billy D. Williams, I forget what his character's name was, and then at the end of the series...
Lando Calrissian.
Lando Calrissian, but by the end of the series, she's with the White Shadow, Ken Howard. I don't know how that happened. Anyway, but she's basically there to be the black bitch. Well, that's what Diane Carroll called the characters. Like, it's the first black bitch on television. And that was, for some reason, some corners I was seen as somewhat controversial. Oh, this is bad for the young children. Like, let black people have some fun. We also like to have, trashy shows where people just slap each other around. Let us have our entertainment, for Christ's sake.
Yeah, white people had Madonna for years.
Yeah, you don't need... some of us, not everything has to be the civil rights movement, for God's sake. Everyone has to be good, upstanding person. They can let her be a bitch. That's so much fun while it lasted.
Roz returns home to find Eve and Poe running home, screaming after having tormented a snake that was just minding its business.
Huh.
Roz decrees that for the foreseeable future, her children are homebound because the world is dangerous, scary, and full of child-killing buses.
Yeah, I mean, really, it's the premonition that makes her freak out, like, from her sister-in-law that goes, okay, you can just stay in the house.
That combined with the psychic telling her to look to her children.
That too, yes, you're right, yeah.
Next is a short montage of children trying not to be bored out of their minds. The montage is short because there are no video games or televisions in this movie.
Well, that's another thing. We're not quite sure what year this is,
nope,
right?
We are not.
It's probably set in the early 60s.
Probably.
But we don't actually know that.
Eve pranks her brother, leaving a fake spider next to his head for when he wakes up. Poe's screams cause Roz to cut a finger while slicing vegetables, and Eve decides to be a little sociopath and pour emotional lemon juice on it. Eventually, it occurs to Roz to go see to her son.
Now, what do you mean by that? What happens when she pour a little emotional lemon juice? What are you talking about?
Does it hurt? Does what hurt? Your finger! You cut it, mother! Maisel pulls Eve aside to mention that she's being a brat. Eve tells her about what she saw between her daddy and Maddie. Maisel's response, and I missed this on the first watch, is to threaten Eve with harm if she ever tells anyone else. Then, as if that shouldn't be the end of that relationship, Maisel tells Eve about her own adulterous ways and how she cucked her first husband to death.
Okay, so Maisel has had 3 husbands. One we saw already die from either a spider bite or car crash. Something happens to him. The others we see in flashback.
Well, the first one we see in flashback. We don't actually see the second one at all.
That's a good point, right. The second one is the one who's in the military, right? Because there's a guy who's wearing an army suit. You remember? Because she has this...
Okay, he might have died overseas.
Because there's a scene where there's 3 of them walking, and I was like, okay, so those are their 3 husbands.
Yeah.
We know one gets shot by a guy who wanted to be her lover, and she sort of wanted to be his lover, but that didn't work out.
Well, they were lovers. They were already lovers. And lover confronted, and she was like, no, I'm going to stay with my husband. And the husband's like, shoot me. So he's like, okay. And he shoots him.
Yeah, all right, so that's how that relationship ended.
So this is why I describe it as she cucked him to death.
But the second or third, no, it wouldn't be the third, I guess it would be the second husband, whoever the guy in the military suit, we never actually find out about him.
That was the second one, and yeah, we don't hear anything about him. But he was in military garb, and as you mentioned in a post-show the other day, when you think about the military, you don't think of careers, you think about people who go somewhere and don't come home. So that, sure.
It's feasible. It's weird that it's never really addressed. They never actually say that's what happened. Just like, I guess you just have, it's implied.
Well, the first one was dramatic, and the third one was during the movie. So the second one we can just go with, yeah, it was military, that just kind of happens. So Cicely waits up for her father and starts playing part of bartender / homemaker, asking what he wants. The commotion wakes Eve, who interrupts, earning dagger looks from Cicely before Lewis sends them both to bed. We get an entirely new character now. It's a rainy day, and a wandering artist, Julian Greyraven, shows up on Mazelle's doorstep. He doesn't have any money, but he needs her to help him find his runaway wife. In exchange, he paints Mazelle's portrait, and then they start making out. Julian Greyraven is played by Vondi Curtis Hall, who we saw for the show in Coming to America, Falling Down. He was not economically viable man in Falling Down, and Gridlocked.
Well, did he appear in Gridlock? Well, he appeared in Gridlock, and he also directed it.
Yeah.
And I've seen him in, of course, Chicago Hope. He was recently in Blue Bayou. That's from 2016, I think. I see
Another movie with Bayou in the title.
With Bayou, yeah, he likes Bayou. I meant to check and see if he's from Louisiana. He was also in Harriet, and he was in Bad Lieutenant, Port of Call, New Orleans, and he was in Clear and Present Danger.
And we've both seen him in Broken Arrow and Die Hard 2, and I've seen him in Romeo plus Juliet. It's the one with Leonardo DiCaprio in it.
Who was Juliet?
Claire Danes.
Okay.
Back at the Batistas, Roz interrogates Eve as to Cicely's whereabouts just before Cicely returns home. She'd gone to visit Lewis, working rounds at the hospital. Over train tracks even, and still managed to return safely. Since the world didn't kill her, Roz slaps her across the face.
Well, I think you get into this a little bit, but I think it's not so much, the world didn't kill her, and that's why she slaps her across the face. It's like, honey, I told you not to do this, and you didn't listen to me.
Yeah, but that's bullshit reasoning anyway.
That is called Southern Black home raising, buddy.
That's called child abuse, buddy.
That's how we do it, baby.
I don't care what the color of the skin is, that's child abuse.
That's how it's done, my man. Give that kid a good smack.
And it really helped. It really changed Cicely's behavior through this movie, didn't it, Joe?
You teach that kid who's boss.
At night, Roz waits up for her husband. Cicely comes down and Roz forbids her from waiting up for her father anymore. Cicely blames her mother for her father's behavior and then runs back upstairs. Later that night, neither Cicely nor Eve can sleep between the ongoing thunderstorm and their parents arguing. And just as suddenly as he appeared, Julian Greyraven must leave to find his wife so that he can divorce her and have Mazelle marry him to death.
We never actually see them get married.
Nope, we never actually see him again.
No, he's at the funeral.
Oh, he is? Okay. Not far from where that conversation is taking place, a little black boy is killed by a bus. So yay, the decree is lifted?
Well, to be fair, they actually do bring that up in the film,
I know, they do.
It's, oh goodness, he's not, our kids aren't dead. And you're like, a child died.
It was the grandmother. The grandmother was like, someone's kid died and you're all like celebrating, right? And like as an afterthought, Roz is like, so who was it? Oh, it was Darcy's boy or whoever the hell it was. Oh.
Yeah.
Eve runs upstairs to tell Cicely, who is perfectly happy to remain miserably cocooned in her bed, until Eve lifts a pair of blood-soaked shorts off the floor and starts teasing her sister about getting her period. Cicely chases Eve outside, tackles her, and pummels her before Roz can pull her off. Roz is puzzled by Cicely's violent outburst. She's puzzled, Joe. She's puzzled why this child, who she hits when the child doesn't do what she wants, would hit another person for doing something that they don't want.
Perfectly normal Southern family behavior.
Lewis comes home and offers Cicely a nice lady doctor to help her through this.
Yeah, because the girl is very, very upset. Clearly, it's not just because her mom smacked her. Something else has happened.
Yeah.
And they can't figure out what it is. Although the dad really should have some idea. He's responsible for why she's acting like this. Quite frankly, way more than what the mom did.
Well, we'll get there in a moment.
Yes, we do.
Even with her freedom, Eve's behavior continues towards the mischievous. She steals a pineapple down at the market. She tries to run off, but is stopped in her track by Eloza, who calls her a bad girl. As Eve runs away, sans pineapple, Eloza cracks up laughing.
That is, I guess it's not out of character for this girl to behave this way. She sort of acts out. Maybe she'll do some bad things. But considering the way that town is, everyone
knows everybody.
Yeah. So where is she going? They would know who she is. It's like, what was the point of that?
Oh, honey, you brought home a pineapple. Is this the one you stole from the guy down at the market who you know personally?
The guy
who called me immediately afterwards and told me that my daughter stole the pineapple? How did you fucking think this was going to go?
Yeah, exactly. It makes no sense.
After a brief discussion between Roz and Lewis and agreement from Cicely, it is decided that she will go live with her grandmother for a while, as she is obviously going through something. Eve begs her sister not to go, and Cicely tells Eve that her father tried to rape her and slapped her for rejecting his advances. Eve promises to hate him for her. She even says she will kill him for hurting her sister.
Yeah, that whole scene and then it gets later even more complicated. But yeah, basically the father comes home drunk or something after having a fight with the wife. And that's where that was a night of the thunderstorm. What is her name? Cicely comes downstairs and said, "Oh, Daddy," and starts giving him a massage, whatever. And then suddenly she is sitting on his lap, and then suddenly he just like goes in for a kiss, like, "Oh, ugh."
Yeah. I was like, oh, it is gonna happen. That is something. Fuck, god damn it. I mean, there gotta be other reasons to want to kill your dad, right?
Well, in terms of reasons, I think that should be number one, don't you?
I mean, yeah, but does it have to be that? The movie was written by a person. They could have wrote a different story.
Then it wouldn't be Gothic. How many Gothic stories do you know? It all has this weird sexual...
I don't know how many Gothic stories I know. Apparently, I wouldn't recognize a Gothic story if it slapped me in the face and told me it was Gothic. When it's time for Cicely to go, Lewis drives and Roz goes with her. Poe and Eve are in the care of Maisel. From the car, Maisel watches Cicely give the shush sign to Eve, who is staring daggers at Lewis. Eve is up late waiting for her father to return. Maisel posits that he got stuck in traffic before launching into a minute-long monologue about her existential angst. Eve snaps her out of it by asking how to kill somebody with voodoo. Maz says you can't, and asks why she would ask such a thing, and just who does Eve want dead? Maisel asks for Eve's hands, the way that she does when reading somebody in a psychic session. Eve complies, and Maisel recoils, saying Eve can keep her secrets if she's so insistent. To be clear, this is because Eve has that same psychic power and used it to block her aunt. That's not really stated or explored, but it's the only thing that makes sense here.
Except, it turns out she didn't block her, or at least...
She didn't block her, no.
Yeah, okay. Or maybe she tried, but...
Yeah.
Yeah.
Eve swipes $20 from her dad's wallet and then goes to the market. While there, she hints to Lenny Moreau that his wife is cheating on him, then goes to find Elzora.
It was a very soap opera-y scene.
Yeah.
It was like, I found that very interesting. Like, did your wife spend all that time with my dad? That's weird. Oh, well, talk to you later. I've seen it in so many shows. I'm like, wow. This would have been a great soap scene.
At Elzora's house, they have some soup and discuss killing someone with voodoo for $20. Elzora asks who it is, and Eve is adamant that it's secret. Elzora offers protection from this person, and Eve again insists on death. Elzora cautions that people tend to die at their own speed and asks once more if Eve is sure that this is what she wants. Eve confirms that, yes, she wants this person dead. Elzora says that she needs some hair from the victim, and Eve already has it. Elzora says to come back Thursday night, and they'll see what happens then.
I mean, Elzora is also kind of disappointed that it's not Maisel, that
yeah,
it's dead.
Her competition for the psychic gig, yeah.
I don't know if she's really her competition. They seem to have two different levels there, and she's like at the lower level. But I just laughed when she said, "Is it Maisel you want dead?" She's like, "No." And you go, "Oh, too bad."
Too bad.
Such a pity. Which is weird, because if that's the case, if you really want to kill her, couldn't you just do it herself?
Yeah.
You don't really need it. I don't know. I don't know how the hoodoo, juju stuff works.
Well, it's complicated, Joe.
It's very complicated, but not too complicated, because all you need is some hair. That helps. And she got it off her father's comb did she get the same time she got the $20?
Yeah.
So this kid knew what she was doing.
We have no idea on what day of the week that occurred. But on Thursday, apparently, after practicing stabbing a voodoo doll for a while, and with her dad not dead yet, Eve returns to Elzora. Elzora asks if the target had died yet, and Eve asks how he could have if she hasn't given Eve a voodoo doll yet. Not once in their conversations earlier did Eve ask for a doll.
And Elzora points that out to her, like, we said nothing about no doll.
Elzora casts a spell involving burying the hair in a graveyard and laughs as Eve runs away, terrified for her father. And it wasn't until I was writing this part that I realized what was going on here. Eve wanted a voodoo doll of her father so she could kill him or not at her leisure. But since she didn't say that at all, now she fears her father will die and she can't stop it.
Right.
Eve heads down the train tracks to King's Bar, where she finds Lewis with Maddie. She confronts her father, who says to meet him outside and to let him say goodbye to Maddie. Outside, Eve sees a dark figure approaching. It's Lenny, Maddie's husband. My notes here say Smiley is big mad. He confronts Lewis in the bar, and Lewis gaslights. Maddie leaves with her husband, followed by Lewis and Eve.
Now, quick question. Where did he think his wife was? Well, obviously he knew she was at the bar. So if he was upset about, he knew, or at least he suspected there was an affair going on. Where was he this whole time? Is he getting drunk somewhere else and then deciding to come find his wife?
I guess so. Outside, Lenny warns Lewis to not say one word to his wife or he's a dead man. Lewis doesn't take this seriously and says goodnight to Maddie. Lenny pulls out a gun, and another character played by Samuel L. Jackson dies.
Of all the movies we've seen of him, how many times does he get shot? It's actually not that much.
He dies, though. Jurassic Park, he dies. In Jackie Brown, he dies.
Pulp Fiction, he doesn't die.
Pulp Fiction, he doesn't die. Hold on, there was another one. He dies in Goodfellas.
He does die in Goodfellas, yeah. He has a very small part in there, but yes, he definitely dies in it.
I don't think he doesn't die in Do the Right Thing, and he doesn't die in Coming to America.
He definitely doesn't.
But he does die in 3 other movies that we've seen.
Yeah.
So this is the 4th movie that we see a character played by Samuel L. Jackson dying in.
To be clear, he produced this movie, so he could have chosen whether his character lived or not. So
yeah.
Obviously, he's cool with this sort of thing.
So Lewis's funeral is like most other funerals, and the scene ends with Roz and her children all cuddling in bed together.
Now, to be clear, yeah, this is obviously the daughters are all very, very upset, and Cicely gets especially upset, and that's when Mazelle's boyfriend, whatever his name is, I forget, played by what's-his-face, from Chicago Hope, picks her up and takes her into the house.
Grey Raven,
right.
Eve goes through her father's things and finds a letter that he'd written to Mazelle, giving his side of what Cicely had told Eve. And as it would be, it's rather exculpatory from his perspective.
Yes, in his letter, he says, like, how could you accuse me of doing that to my own child? Yes, I could have handled it better, but I would never.
Yep.
I mean, that's the long and short of it.
Eve takes the letter and confronts Cicely, calling her a liar and guilting her over having hated their father for her. Then Eve demands Cicely's hands the way Mazelle had asked for hers. What she sees is mostly confusion, and Cicely breaks down crying. Eve holds her and says it's okay.
Yes, I think the point of that is, like, she's a child. She doesn't really understand what happened.
And again, you mentioned it earlier, there are no other children.
Yes.
The only other child gets hit by a bus and dies.
Yes. We never even see.
So she doesn't have any peers to form relational feelings for and attachments for and shit. So, I don't know. She could have had a crush on her dad. I don't know. I hate that I'm even having to think about this.
Or at least she was having, I mean, look, let's be clear here. This is a Southern family set in a certain time and era, hell, maybe even today, where they don't really discuss, human sexuality. So maybe, what does this girl even know about the birds and the bees? Mm-hmm. And she's becoming a woman and all that other stuff. How much has her mother even told her?
Yeah. So they take the letter and set it adrift in the Mississippi, which isn't the best way to dispose of that kind of particular evidence, but whatever. Then Eve's adult voiceover reiterates the opening about the nature of memory. The end.
The end. So, my friend, does this still work?
Yeah, I think it still works. It's really well written. It's an engaging story. And if I might nitpick a little bit, in a way she did kill, she set all of the events that killed her dad in motion from a certain point. When she was on her way to Elzora with $20 intent on getting a voodoo doll so she could kill her father, she stopped and gave Lenny the notion that her father was stripping his wife. She set that in motion. So there is a perspective from which she did kill her father.
Although, in all honesty,
he did it.
Her father is responsible for all this. I mean,
he's responsible for his own freaking actions and shit.
And also, you have to wonder, what is the matter with Lenny? They even say it in one of the characters, if not all of them, say it like, oh, everyone knows he's having an affair with her. How does he not know? He's like, how is he not hearing the rumors? He needs a little child, a little girl to tell him what's going on. He can't figure it out for himself. They seem to spend a lot of time together. My wife seems to really like him. He seems to really like her. They're alone a lot. Could there be nothing? First, he's apparently hearing of it. So this child goes up to him and goes like, they sure do spend a lot of time together. Oh, well, Back to what I was doing.
Well, Roger Guanover-Smith doesn't generally play the really intellectual characters.
Anyway, but for myself, yeah, I agree. It still works. It's almost timeless, really. I mean, most of the themes you could still do today and probably for years from now. I mean, there will always be people into this mystic bullshit.
And again, for the mystic bullshit, at least it had the courage to make the mystic bullshit look like it was working the way it should work if it worked.
Yeah, fair. I think that's correct. And, the performances are terrific. It's a good story. Like I said, that opening, like the summer, whatever. What did we say? The like, killed my father?
I was 10 years old when I killed my father.
That is a strong opening. I mean, you get someone's attention when you hear that. Okay. So, yeah, very, very good for him. And this is their first, Casey Lemon's first directorial debut, and it's fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think there's much more we can add.
No, it was a good freaking movie. And it works.
And it still works.
Even the creepiness of it, even the sexual creepiness of it, wasn't overplayed. It wasn't graphic. It wasn't gory. No. It was done where it's like, this is the problem, and here's something to show you the problem, but we're not going to linger on, I think part of it's because it was written and directed by a woman. So she's more sensible.
Okay, George, what's up next?
Next week, we'll be following in the fine Gothic tradition with Happy Gilmore from 1996. I think this is our first foray into the Adam Sandler filmography.
Yeah, I don't think we've ever seen an Adam Sandler movie before.
Nope.
This podcast. And, good follow-up to Eve's Bayou. This falls perfectly. Okay. Oh, boy.
You seen this one?
I've never seen Happy Gilmore. I assume you have.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I've seen most of the Adam Sandler movies a number of times.
Not surprised by that.
I'm not sure if I'm still going to like it, but I did at one point.
So I guess that's it for this episode. I'm Joe Dixon. Thanks for listening.
And I'm George Romacka. Thanks for listening indeed, because if a podcast drops and there's no one around to hear it, it's just another collection of ones and zeros that doesn't matter.
You told Daddy you didn't practice no voodoo.
Too desperate.
Does it work?
We'll see.
But what if it don't?
I don't think she'll sue me.
You've been listening to Does This Still Work? Produced by Joe Dixon and George Romacka. The hosts can be reached via social media, email, or the contact page at dtswpod.com. Be good to yourself and others, because that still works.
Brother or half-brother.
Don't pass out on me.
So, George, can you guess who got COVID again? Tell us about the great overtime you've been doing. Can the government solve loneliness?
If you were arrested, what would it be for?
So, George, if a person starts preaching on your flight, you're flying somewhere, wherever, and what would you do? Now, I don't know, have you been following the whole thing in Union Square?